Top of the morning, fight fans. This is Kurt DeVille with Counterpunch Boxing News, and I have some new news concerning Zurdo Ramirez. You asked for it, you will eventually get it. Zurdo calls out Jai's resume, and he says, is Opetai'a ready for a true world challenge? Zordo Ramirez isn't convinced that Jai Opetai'a is ready for the big ring leagues after Opetaia'S easy KO of Claudio Squeo and call out for the unification fight. Zurdo slammed his resume as a B-C level opponent and questioned if Opetai'a is truly tested. And let me counterpunch. I find that strange how certain people try to attack others' resume. You know what I mean? Zordo Ramirez himself, he himself hasn't really been in too big of fights, to be fair. The biggest fight that I could recall that he was ever in was at light heavyweight against Dimitri Bivol, which he lost. And the strange thing is, other than that, I haven't seen him in with anyone to note. I look at Zurdo's resume, and I got it pulled up here, and I'm looking at he will fight on the 28th, okay, which that may be on the night that Jake Paul fights Chavez Jr. Yuniel Dorticos, right? He's fighting Dorticos. He fought Joe Smith, okay, Dimitri Bivol, Sullivan Barrera. These are marquee names at light heavyweight, though, And, you look at Arthur Abraham, he's had a slew of fights, which he's won. And he lost to Bivol, and he's fighting Dorticos. And, he is favored to win that fight, to be fair. But other than that, though, if you look at his record, he questions his overall resume, BC. Like, okay, well, you've been in there with some pretty decent names, but that doesn't mean you should slam Jai Opetai'a just because, of his resume, because when he fights you and beats you, then, he will beat you. And I think that is an attempt, to be honest, of what fighters do when they don't want to fight. When they don't really want to fight those fighters or those challenge fighters or the other champion for the unification, which makes more sense than anything else. That's why you went to cruiserweight in the first place, because there was nowhere else for you to go. I mean, who else could you fight? Would you probably get stopped by Beterbiev, because Beterbiev is that guy. Okay, so, other than that, though, I think Zurdo needs to understand what type of platform that Jai Opetai'a has been exposed to, okay? Zurdo wasn't on the Days of Reckoning. Jai Opetai'a was. Zurdo is not really favored by Turki Al-Sheikh. Jai Opetai'a is. You see what I mean? When you've been around for the last 2 or 3 years, 2 years even, you start to realize that opportunities that were given to the selected few are still where they're at if they kept winning. And Jai Opetai'a is 29-0. Okay, he's 29-0. I think his resume is good, and I think the only thing is he does lack the opponents, because the opponents are not coming, and really the only thing is left is Zurdo Ramirez. And Zurdo's saying, he hasn't fought anyone. Well, who else could he fight in the division to make him worthy to fight you, Zurdo? That's the question you ask yourself, if this is not all a ruse. Because it seems like, to me, it's, Zurdo's playing that, why should I fight him because he hasn't fought anyone? His level of opposition is B and C. Well, if you came from light heavy, he couldn't fight the people that you fought. He couldn't fight a Sullivan Barrera. He couldn't fight a overall Joe Smith. He couldn't fight a Dimitri Bivol, because Dimitri Bivol, they're not in that weight class. So that being said, it's like, okay, Well, if you know you're not in the weight class, how could you slam someone's resume from a different weight class? That just makes no sense to me, and him just saying, oh, well, he's not on my level is just another way of him saying, I don't want to fight him. I don't want to fight him at all. You know what I mean? And the crazy thing is, who else will Zurdo fight in the weight class besides Jai Opetaia? Who else is there? For him to be making that type of statement and comment about Jai Opetaia in his resume, well, there's no one really left at cruiserweight. You know what I mean? So I don't really understand Zurdo. The only thing that I can go for or sum up would be he doesn't want to fight him, and this is a good excuse. Instead of, hey, let's get it on. Hey, let's make the fight happen. Since you fight B and C opponents, since your resume's garbage, that means I have more experience. I should beat you easily, right? That's what that should be. And if you can beat me easily, why not make the fight? The money's there. Turki Al-Sheikh will honor that fight and open it with open arms, right? So what difference would it make from his resume? That means if you beat Jai Opetaia, that means you will be the only person to do it, Zurdo. But anyway, you guys tell me what you think of Zurdo finally responding and blasting Jai Opetaia'S resume. Of course, please subscribe. And you guys been Counterpunch.